In 1875, a child in London stopped crying in her crib. The wallpaper in her room was bright green, lined with roses, and laced with arsenic. Her mother changed the paper, but the room never felt clean again. What else lingered on the walls? A corset half laced, a bottle beside a cradle, a spoon, glossed with lead. From the 1850s to 1890s, arsenic pigments and lead paints filled parlors and nurseries. The deaths were misnamed, the rooms never recorded. When beauty was painted, what else was poisoned in silence? Welcome to history's ledger. The Victorian home promised comfort, velvet curtains pooling smoke, gilt mirrors doubling the glow of gaslight, porcelain cups set carefully on polished mahogany. But beauty carried shadows. The walls themselves glowed with color, and that color carried poison. Doctors wrote cholera. Coroners wrote debility. Mothers whispered of headaches and fainting fits. Yet the ledgers never blamed the wallpaper. This is not the story of battles or kings. It is the story of parlors and nurseries, of drawing rooms dressed in arsenic green, of silence thicker than soot, a story where luxury concealed danger and where danger disguised itself as beauty. So let us turn the page together. Let us step into the rooms that promised life and learn how their walls remembered only absence. It is the 12th of November, 1856. In T. Bloomsbury, London, the parlor glowed, vines and birds printed in a spring green. Velvet curtains pooled on the floor. A gilt mirror caught the gaslight and made it multiply. A fainting couch sat beneath lace doilies. The air was warm, but heavy. A child coughed, not sharply. The mother set down a crystal decanter, listening. Comfort was supposed to be soft, but the wallpaper shimmered where light hit it, as if the room itself breathed. Silver spoons rested in a drawer glossed with lead. A porcelain cup rang gently against its saucer. Toys lay on a rug, faintly smelling of paste. In the nursery, a painted horse with two bright eyes waited beside the crib. These were the objects of trust, of status, of beauty. But the green was more than color. It clung to corners, rose with coal dust when curtains shifted, gathered on fingertips that touched flocked paper, then fed a child. The pigment came from Carl Wilhelm Scheele, a Swedish chemist, in 1775. Copper arsenite, brilliant, enduring, deadly. By the mid-1800s, it lined walls from Devon to Bloomsbury. Salesmen called it elegant. Doctors began to call it something else. Devon's mines shipped sacks of arsenic to printers and dyers. At Morris and Company, patterns of fruit and willow carried it into homes. William Morris scoffed at the doctors, called it witch fever. His ledgers recorded profit, not illness. In Bloomsbury, the mother smoothed her child's linen, unaware. She trusted the paper's glow. She trusted the silence. And outside, London faded into soot. Inside, The walls did the same, with color. The green said nothing, but it remembered. The year is 1775, in Sweden. Carl Wilhelm Scheele worked with powders and glass jars. He stirred copper arsenide into solution, and a new green emerged. Bright, unfading, unlike anything before. It clung to paper, to fabric, to plaster. By the 1820s, English wallpaper mills ground it into pigment by the ton. Patterns of ivy, peacocks, vines. Gardens pasted onto drawing room walls. Cities choked with soot longed for greenery. Wallpaper offered spring that could not be wilted, a softness untouched by cold. Families in Birmingham, Edinburgh, Bloomsbury, all pasted it up. Rolls unspooled across parlors and nurseries. Color became comfort. But behind the seams, the paper changed. In damp corners, fungus met arsenic. From their meeting rose gas, trimethylarsine, sweet, invisible, deadly. Even dust, stirred by curtains, could lift poison into lungs. Still, the catalogues grew thicker. Paris green arrived in the 1820s, copper, acetoarsenite. Brighter, bolder, more durable, and more dangerous. Designers called it eternal spring. To touch the paper was velvet, to see it was calm, to breathe it was to take in what no label warned, no stamp marked poison, no law required caution. The danger didn't glow, only the wallpaper did. The green spread not by malice, but by beauty, and once it entered a home, it rarely left. In Birmingham, 1857, a mother stripped wallpaper from her child's nursery. The paper peeled slowly, vines and birds pasted above the crib. The plaster beneath smelled faintly of damp and dust. That night, the child's cough eased. By Sunday, the headaches were gone. The doctor called it summer complaint. The parish book simply recorded recovery. No one wrote arsenic, but the mother didn't forget. Doctors documented the symptoms: fatigue, vomiting, tremors, pale gums. But the diagnoses remained fixed. Cholera, if it struck quickly. Melancholia, if it lingered. Neurasthenia, if it made a mother forget her place. Hysteria, if she dared suggest the wallpaper was to blame. And why would she? The parlor looked perfect. Gaslight shimmered against gilt mirrors. Velvet curtains softened the corners. A crystal decanter rested on a marble sideboard. In the nursery, a painted horse waited beside a crib. The paper glowed, calm, quiet, unchanged. But beneath its surface, chemistry had begun to shift. Damp crept through plaster. Fungi fed on paste and pigment. With it came trimethylarsine, colorless, faintly sweet, breathed without notice. The dust from flocked leaves rose with every footstep, every sweep of the curtain. Chemists debated the cause: mold, abrasion, heat. The doctors, unsure, defaulted to familiar words. The danger had no label. The wallpaper had no warning. The deaths arrived gently. In London, a houseguest fell ill after 2 weeks in a papered bedroom. In Bath, a family thrived by the sea but declined at home. One doctor suggested removing the wallpaper. Another dismissed it outright. Air, he said. Nerves, he added. At Osborne House, it was whispered that a diplomat died not from wine or illness, but from walls lined in green. No ledger recorded it, but the rumor remained. In Paddington, a maid's gums darkened. Burton's line, the sign of slow poisoning. No one connected it to the painted crib, the lead-glossed drawer, or the soft green pattern dusted daily. And still, catalogues promised eternal spring. Sheely's green, Paris green, bright under gaslight, unfading. The salesman dabbed a cloth, no stain, no proof. Coroners remained careful. Enteritis, exhaustion, convulsions. No column for wallpaper, yet private letters told more. From Clerkenwell, a wife could not eat near the parlour wall. From Manchester, a seamstress found her hands numb after work. From Bath, a clergyman noted a family's health returned once vines were stripped. Some rooms were safe. Some families couldn't afford to change. But patterns emerged, quiet and repeating. The law regulated arsenic sold in jars, not the kind printed on nursery walls. It was rumor, not legislation, that changed the market. A hesitation at the counter, a glance toward the baseboard. One mother asked, "Is this the safe green?" The clerk smiled. The house waited. The parlor still looked perfect. But the paper remembered. In the valleys of Devon, white smoke drifted from chimneys that burned both ore and lungs. By the mid-1800s, the Devon Great Consols mine had become the world's largest source of arsenic. Dust settled into hedgerows, homes, and skin. Workers coughed. Livestock died. But the ledgers praised profit. What once was nuisance became commodity. Arsenic was scraped, bagged, and shipped to London, Birmingham, Leeds. It left in burlap sacks, pale, clinging, and deadly, bound for ink trays and pigment mills. What returned were patterns too vivid to fade. Factories churned color into design. In Manchester, steam presses rolled out wallpaper by the yard. Ivy, grapes, pomegranates. Walls transformed into gardens. Workers brushed powder from aprons, coughed into sleeves, and carried the green dust home. Children swept the drying racks, their hands small enough to reach the corners. They brought it into their beds. In London, Morris and Company rose with acclaim. William Morris, the poet of nature and simplicity, sold willow, fruit, and vine, many of them printed in arsenical greens. His designs were praised for their handcraft. His profits traced back to the very mines that filled the air with poison. Morris dismissed the doctors. Bitten by witch fever, he called them. He claimed the danger was invented. His defenders said he didn't know. His critics said he had to. His ledgers recorded wages and sales. They did not record breath. In Oxford Street showrooms, customers ran gloved fingers over panels of flocked wallpaper. Durable, the salesman said, doesn't fade in smoke. The glow of gaslight sealed the deal. They imagined health, beauty, permanence, not dust. Factories fed both ends. Workers with raw lungs, families with gleaming parlors. Poverty bore the cost. Wealth bore the comfort. Advertisements promised more. Paris green, brighter, cheaper, unfading. Showrooms offered samples that shimmered under chandeliers. Housewives carried them home, planning walls that would outlast the soot. But letters told other stories. A merchant's wife in Leeds could not eat near her drawing room wall. A clergyman in Bath stripped the nursery and saw the headaches vanish. A child in Manchester recovered at the coast, then sickened again at home. The doctor wrote air, the wall stayed silent. Some manufacturers began to stamp arsenic free on their rolls. Many didn't. Others labeled falsely. The danger wasn't banned, it was quietly rebranded. The print shops kept moving, the parlors kept glowing, the dust kept falling. No legislation touched the wall, no inspector visited the showroom, no signature was required at the counter. The paper glowed, the child breathed, the parlor shimmered, and the green waited. In homes across Manchester, Leeds, and London, wallpaper was applied like ceremony. Rolls were measured, cut, brushed with glue, pressed smooth to the walls. Seams vanished under hands practiced in making rooms feel permanent. The colors deepened as the flock dried, vines and blossoms catching gaslight with impossible brilliance. But plaster never truly dried. Behind the paper, moisture crept, and in that damp, something began to grow. Fungi fed quietly on the starch and pigment. In feeding, they exhaled a vapor, trimethylarsine gas, faintly sweet, colorless, unseen. Families didn't notice, only that certain rooms felt strange. A parlor that smelled faintly metallic, a nursery where dusk carried headaches, a drawing room where laughter softened early into silence. The wallpaper remained brilliant. Sheely's green, invented in 1775, and Paris green, introduced decades later, were praised for one thing above all. They did not fade. Not in lamplight, not in coal smoke, not with. That perfection became betrayal. Imagine standing in a parlor. Gaslight hums above velvet curtains. A mirror reflects vines printed in emerald. A crystal decanter casts a glow across the mantel. Every sense says comfort, but the walls breathe. Arsenic rises where no eye can see. Doctors began to ask questions. In Edinburgh, a pamphlet warned of harmful vapors from fashionable papers. Others described experiments. Damp cloth rubbed on wallpaper turned test strips green. A sample held to flame gave off garlic-sweet smoke, unmistakable. The findings were plain, but beauty proved louder. Catalogs kept selling spring. No fade, no soot stain. Showrooms showed green that glowed under chandeliers. Salesmen waved white cloths. See? No dust. They did not wave a flame. They did not ask anyone to inhale. In one Manchester home, a child who had withered all winter regained strength at the sea, then weakened again after return. The nursery was lined in vines, the paper never touched. Doctors prescribed tonics, the mother stripped the walls, the child recovered. The doctor called it coincidence. In these homes, harm did not shout. It moved softly. In the nursery, milk cooled on a table. A painted horse leaned against a velvet cushion. The gaslight warmed the flocked paper just enough. A nurse sang. The baby slept. No one questioned the air. No one saw the bloom behind the wallpaper. Factories defended their products. Morris dismissed the science. Catalogs glowed. Guests admired. Servants dusted. Evenings passed in green rooms where no one could name the reason for the cough. The danger did not need to be loud. It only needed to last. And the green, still glowing, endured. The Victorian nursery was designed to comfort. Soft colors, filtered light, warmth from the grate. Guidebooks called it the child's first kingdom. There would be toys on the carpet, a chair for the nurse, a wallpaper chosen to soothe, rabbits in the brambles, birds in leafy scrolls. It was meant to be the safest room in the house. It was often the most dangerous. Cribs gleamed in white gloss, laid carbonate blended into oil for shine. The paint chipped sweetly. Infants mouthed everything. Tiny flakes found gums, and over time, a line appeared, faint, blue-black, across the teeth. Burton's line, a whisper in enamel. The bottles were worse. Porous glass held milk that turned quickly. Rubber teats cracked and clung to bacteria. Manuals insisted on thrift, on reuse, on silence. Mothers followed instruction, not instinct. And when a child weakened, it was called poor constitution. Wallpaper lined the nursery walls with calm and color, blossoms, flocked birds, vines that would not wilt. The flock felt like velvet. Children ran hands across it as they crawled. Dust collected in corners. Curtains captured more. Each night, coal smoke lifted traces higher into the air. A nurse might rock the chair beside the crib, her collar lightly scented, her voice low. The air smelled like warm milk, paste, perfume, and the faint sweetness of something no one named. The baby breathed. Reports surfaced in the Lancet. A child wasting in winter, thriving after the wallpaper was stripped. A family whose headaches vanished after a room was left bare. A physician in Manchester puzzled over a child who dragged herself along a soot-black baseboard and later couldn't walk. Still, doctors hesitated. Pamphlets circulated. Families whispered. But to accuse the nursery, To accuse beauty was to accuse care itself. So silence held. The cradle remained beneath vines. The doll smiled beneath the glow. The rattle still gleamed. The wallpaper did not fade. And one by one, the names appeared in parish books. Infantile cholera, failure to thrive, weakness of vitality. No priest wrote arsenic. No physician wrote paint. No father could admit luxury might have played a part. The room was lovely. The danger was soft. The loss was quiet. And the green, printed in patterns of joy, remembered more than anyone else. In 1874, a physician in Michigan placed a book on a library shelf. Its title was Shadows from the Walls of Death. It weighed no more than any other, but its pages could kill. Dr. Robert C. Kedzie, professor of chemistry, had grown tired of silence. He'd seen too many homes lined in vivid greens, too many families coughing without cause, too many deaths named summer cholera, melancholia, debility. He knew where the danger lived, not in the medicine chest, but on the wall. So he gathered wallpaper, 200 samples, each pasted into a volume, leaf by leaf. Each page printed in arsenic-rich pigment. No diagrams, no chapters, no argument, only patterns, green, floral, elegant. The danger was not in what was said, but what was touched. Readers complained of nausea, dizziness, headaches after leafing through it. Librarians sealed copies, wrapped them, locked them away. Some were destroyed. Only 5 remain, still stored with gloves and masks. The book survives as both warning and artifact. Step into a library in Lansing, 1875. Oak shelves, gaslight hissing, a marble bust watching. On a table, a plain-bound book. A curious hand opens it. Emerald vines shimmer on the page. The reader brushes a fingertip across the flock. A day later, he's unwell. The message was effective. Not just data, danger you could feel. Kedzie wanted to prove poison wasn't theoretical. It lived in rooms. It lived in beauty. It didn't require ingestion, only breathing. His book was not science alone. It was theater, a shock to force awareness, a mirror to show families what they had invited into their homes. The press responded with fascination. The book that sickens readers, poison between covers. Some mocked, others warned. But the word arsenic finally reached parlors. Across the Atlantic, Britain had no such book. Doctors issued pamphlets, critics lectured, but no one bound arsenic into pages and dared the public to open it. In America, Kedzie's book became a legend. In Britain, wallpaper remained a suspicion too polite to speak aloud, and still, homes were papered. In Bloomsbury, a mother leaned in to choose a pattern. She admired vines with gold edging. The salesman smiled. Arsenic-free, he assured her. He didn't test it. She didn't ask. The wallpaper was delivered. The room was beautiful. Her child didn't sleep well. Shadows from the Walls of Death wasn't just a book. It was a ledger of color, of silence, of breath turned dangerous. And unlike any doctor's file or funeral record, it forced the danger into your hands. In Kedie's book, beauty couldn't hide. In British homes, it still did. On the Isle of Wight, Queen Victoria's private retreat stood quiet above the sea. Osborne House, with its Italianate towers, velvet parlors, and gold-framed mirrors, was meant as a sanctuary, a place beyond soot, beyond Parliament, beyond London's noise. The gaslight flickered softer. The air smelled of sea salt and polish. In every corner, elegance signaled order, but a whisper disturbed the silence. A diplomat, they said, had died overnight, not from illness or wine, but from wallpaper, not in a city home. At Osborne, there was no official report. No coroner blamed the wall. The death certificate named something else. Still, the story spread, because it made sense. Sheely's green had already been identified in laboratories. Arsenic fumes had already been measured. American libraries were sealing Kedie's poisoned book behind glass. Doctors were warning. Yet no law had passed in Britain. No ban had been written. And if danger could enter the Queen's chambers, even briefly, then the danger was everywhere. Step into the imagined room, a canopy bed, a chandelier flickering low, velvet curtains drawn against the sea, crystal catching the gaslight, wallpaper blooming in vines and blossoms, the green deeper than moss. To the eye, the room offered peace. To the lungs, something else. The rumor lived because Osborne was never meant to betray. It was supposed to be safety-made architectural, the crown's domestic ideal. But arsenic did not respect ideals. It drifted from plaster and paste whether the room was humble or royal. For the public, the story shifted something. It was no longer just about poor homes and careless factories. Even the monarchy might be vulnerable. If the Queen's wallpaper could kill, then who was safe? But still, no action followed. The government remained quiet. Manufacturers denied. No regulation touched the wall. The danger lingered between private rumor and public silence. And in that silence, the rooms kept breathing. Osborne became less a place than a symbol, a contradiction. Luxury had promised control, but control never reached the corners of the drawing room. And so, the wallpaper continued to glow. No law removed it. No label marked it. No voice from the throne spoke of it. But the green, as in every parlor, nursery, and hall, remained. It did not need to be confirmed to be remembered. It only needed to wait. In 1851, Parliament passed a law to control arsenic. The Arsenic Act required that the poison be colored when sold. No more confusion with sugar or flour. Apothecaries were told to lock it up, write every sale into ledgers, and record the buyer's name. Arsenic, in jars and bottles, was now dangerous in the eyes of the state. But arsenic in wallpaper? That went untouched. No color was added. no label required, no law applied. The government drew a line between poison as product and poison as decoration. To Parliament, arsenic sold as rat bait was a threat. Arsenic hung on a nursery wall was fashion. Step into an apothecary's shop. Glass jars labeled in Latin, drawers locked. A clerk records a name, a date, a weight. Everything by the book. Now step into a wallpaper showroom. Rolls unfurled across polished counters. Durable, the salesman says, won't fade. He sells the green with a smile. No ledger, no warning, no silence broken. Some physicians asked Parliament to include wallpapers in the Act. Pamphlets warned. Chemists demonstrated. Families hesitated. But nothing changed. The lobby of style was louder than science. Sales remained strong. Patents printed. Nurseries lined. The same poison that required a locked drawer in the pharmacy was being brushed into the corners of a baby's room without question. A father read the newspaper. New law regulates arsenic. He nodded, relieved. He looked around his parlor. Flocked leaves, rich green, paper glowing in the gaslight. He did not know, and the law did not tell him, that his walls were exempt. The irony deepened with time. Arsenic in a teaspoon had to be dyed blue. Arsenic in a bouquet of vines needed no label. The act proved the government could act, and it proved that it chose not to. So the poison stayed in the parlor, unseen, unnamed, and the green, always obedient, kept its glow. Picture the parlor in 1860. Gaslight glows above velvet curtains. A gilt mirror reflects the flame into two. Porcelain cups wait on a polished sideboard. Silver spoons rest in perfect lines. The wallpaper is brilliant. Vines, birds, blossoms printed in Paris green. Everything suggests order. Everything promises beauty. A mother pours tea. A father folds the newspaper. A child leans against the wall. The room is calm, familiar, trusted. No one questions the glow. Doctors have started whispering. Chemists have issued warnings. But the salesman says the paper is improved. The pattern doesn't fade. The flock still feels like velvet. Guests admire. Servants dust. No one sees what floats between the seams. Would you have known? Would you have looked at the vines and seen danger? Would you have stripped the paper before the fever, before the silence? Or would you have trusted the room? This was the cruelty of the age. That silence seemed safer than suspicion. So now, across time, we ask you, would you have torn the wallpaper down, or would you have left it up, glowing in the quiet? If this chapter stayed with you, leave a comment. What would you have done in that parlor? And subscribe to keep opening the ledgers that silence tried to seal shut. In an Edinburgh laboratory in 1839, a physician pressed a damp cloth to a square of wallpaper, green, flocked, vivid under the light. As the fabric darkened, He tested it, and the result was clear. Arsenic, not theory, not trace. Present and capable of movement. He recorded it in ink, quiet, confident. Others repeated the experiment. Strips of wallpaper held to flame released the telltale scent, garlic sweet, metallic, the breath of arsenic gas. Fungi on damp plaster, feeding on paste and pigment, released vapor, invisible to the eye. Dust from flocked surfaces lifted with each curtain drawn, each step, each child's hand trailing along the baseboard. The evidence grew, quietly but steadily. Some scientists argued that arsenic in pigment was fixed and harmless. Others pointed to moisture, mold, and abrasion, all capable of turning decorative calm into invisible threat. The debate deepened as patterns appeared. Children who recovered after walls were stripped, families healthier away from home, servants who sickened only in certain rooms. Imagine the chemist's bench, bottles labeled in Latin, glass clinking, flame licking under iron. Strips of wallpaper soaked, dried, scorched, tested again. A cloth rubbed across a green panel clouds the solution in a beaker. He records the result, then steps back, coughing softly into a cloth. Now step into the parlor. The flocked vines shimmer under gaslight. The air smells of polish and coal. A maid dusts near the curtain, and a faint plume rises. A child touches the wall, then his mouth. The physician who visits later will write cholera, fatigue, infantile weakness. He will not name the wallpaper. The warnings were printed in journals, pamphlets, letters. Still, manufacturers denied. William Morris mocked the fear, calling it witch fever, while profiting from both the wallpaper and the mines. His catalogues gleamed, his papers remained green. Families trusted beauty, trusted silence, trusted that something so elegant could not betray them. A few stripped their walls, most did not. The flock stayed, the green stayed. The chemists kept testing, publishing, urging caution. But the parlors were louder, and the gas, the dust, the silence moved on. The wallpaper endured, so did the arsenic, and the green, soft as ever, remembered everything. Victorian death registers are heavy with ink. Infants lost in nurseries. Fathers collapsed beside the fire. The causes are familiar: consumption, enteritis, melancholia, debility. Each word written with precision, each word also incomplete. Nowhere is the wall recorded. In Birmingham, a family buries a child. The priest notes a short line in the parish book. The doctor names infantile cholera. The neighbors murmur their condolences, but no one strips their wallpaper. In Manchester, a woman collapses after weeks of dizziness. The physician prescribes tonics. The husband shakes his head. The wallpaper remains untouched. Step into a funeral procession. Rain falls softly over soot-black streets. A coffin is carried beneath velvet drapes. The house is quiet behind drawn curtains. Inside, the parlor glows green, vivid, flocked, unfaded. The family returns. The room looks the same. That was the cruelty of domestic poison. It left no mark, no visible wound, no scent, no sound. It mimicked the illnesses of the age so perfectly that it was never questioned. A winter cough, a child who failed to thrive, a woman who lost her appetite. The doctor wrote nerves, the coroner wrote natural causes. The wallpaper continued to bloom, but in the gaps, the pattern was there. Children who improved at the coast and declined upon returning. Families whose ailments disappeared after stripping the parlor. One diplomat's sudden death in a royal chamber, never confirmed but never disproven. These were fragments, but they spoke. Still, nothing in the medical ledgers named the wall. The parlor remained a performance. Gaslight catching crystal, mirrors glowing with softened flame, velvet drapes, porcelain teacups, polished wood. Guests admired the decor. They did not question it, but the silence was louder than the decor. Imagine the sound of dirt falling onto a coffin, the rustle of black crepe, the hush of footsteps fading after the priest's final words. And then the house again, same flocked walls, same chandelier, same quiet. And the green, steady and soft, held the silence. It had witnessed every cough, every weakness, every quiet funeral that followed. By the late 1870s, the language of style began to shift. Catalogues, once proud of Paris green, now favored quieter promises. The phrase arsenic-free first appeared small, cautious. Then it grew, not because of law, not from Parliament, but from something slower, hesitation. Imagine a showroom on Oxford Street, rolls of wallpaper unfurled across mahogany counters, grapevines shimmer under gaslight. A woman hesitates, gloved hand resting on the flock. "Is this one safe?" she asks. The salesman smiles. "Yes, of course." She isn't sure, but she nods. That moment, not legislation, not reform, was what moved the market. In Manchester, a merchant's wife remembers her child coughing in the green nursery improving by the sea. In Bath, a neighbour whispers that her headaches ended the day the wallpaper came down. In Edinburgh, a pamphlet is slipped between pages of a Bible. These are not public protests. They are private decisions, quiet, repeated. Factories responded. Some labeled rolls arsenic-free, whether true or not. Others moved to vegetable dyes. A few clung to old stock, trusting most buyers wouldn't ask. There was no recall, no apology, only a gradual drift away from what had once sold itself. The change wasn't instant. Many homes kept their green. Even paper that peeled at the corners was left in place. Arsenic lingered in the dust, the paste, the baseboards. Still, fashion turned, not from knowledge, but from fear dressed as taste. The label safe for nurseries became part of the marketing pitch, its science unclear, its comfort persuasive, the irony cut deep. For decades, families ignored doctors and doubted chemists. No law banned the pigment. No ban removed it from walls. The public simply moved on. Step into a Bloomsbury parlor in 1885. The wallpaper is new. The salesman promised it was harmless. The family breathes easier, but doesn't strip the old nursery paper upstairs. Not yet. And somewhere, in a back room, a child still sleeps beneath walls that glow slightly in lamplight. The wallpaper curls, but does not fade, but the silence remains. By the 1860s, the name William Morris had become a synonym for beauty. His wallpapers covered drawing rooms, dining halls, and libraries from London to Oxford. His patterns of willow boughs, pomegranates, fruit, and birds seemed to capture nature itself. Critics praised him as a craftsman who rescued design from the machine age, returning art to the home. But beauty has shadows. The mines of Devon great consols, the richest arsenic mines in the world, belonged in part to his family's estate. Sacks of white arsenic left Devon by rail, bound for pigment works. From those sacks came the powders that gave Morris's wallpapers their brilliance. Sheely's green, Paris green, emerald green, all ground into the flock of vines and fruit that adorned Victorian parlors. Morris denied it mattered. The doctors are bitten by witch fever, he wrote. He mocked what he called hysteria. He suggested the danger was invented by rivals, exaggerated by reformers. He insisted that green was harmless. His defenders claim he did not know. His critics insist he could not possibly have been ignorant. His designs glowed with arsenic. His words glowed with dismissal. Step into a Morris showroom on Oxford Street. Rolls are unfurled across mahogany counters. A lady in silk gloves leans close, tracing vines flocked in emerald. A salesman assures her, the paper is durable, the color unfading. She sees beauty. She hears reassurance. She cannot see the dust rising from the flock, cannot feel the arsenic powder clinging to her glove. Now step into a factory where the papers were printed. Men in aprons stir vats of pigment. Steam rises from presses. The air smells of glue and metallic dust. Children sweep flock from the floors, their hands coated, their lungs filling. They carry the dust home, into cottages, into kitchens, into beds. Their names never appear in Morris's catalogues, only in parish registers, sometimes underlined with debility. The contradiction deepens. Morris wrote poetry of nature, of meadows, of trees bending to rivers. He founded the arts and crafts movement, championing handcraft against industry, truth against falsehood. Yet the truth in his own papers was arsenic. The vines were beautiful, the birds were deadly, the contradiction lay pasted to walls. Imagine a London parlour lined with Morris's trellis pattern. Birds hop among wooden latticework, vines climbing across emerald leaves. Gaslight glows across gilt mirrors. Crystal decanters scatter emerald light. Guests admire the craftsmanship, remark on the detail, speak of Morris as genius. A child coughs, a mother faints, a servant grows pale. The ledger records illness, not wallpaper. Morris's legacy would endure. His designs are still preserved, framed in museums, praised for elegance. Even now, conservators handle the samples with gloves. Tests confirm arsenic woven into flock, still present, still dangerous. The papers remain beautiful, but they are no longer touched barehanded. In archives, beauty requires caution. Morris never confessed. He never admitted what chemists proved, what pamphlets warned, what families suspected. His silence matched Parliament's silence, matched the coroner's silence, matched the funerals that passed without blame. He chose to defend beauty, even if beauty betrayed. This is his paradox. He stood against machines, but profited from minds. He championed nature, but sold its poison. He wrote of truth, but dismissed facts. And still, his papers bloom. In museums, in libraries, in archives, the vines still glow with their impossible green. They remind us that beauty and harm can share the same surface, that luxury and silence can be bound together, that absence itself can be a legacy. The ledgers of design name him as master. The ledgers of health never name him at all. But the walls he covered, the walls he colored, they remember. The danger was not confined to Britain. Across the ocean, in America, parlors bloomed in the same greens. Importers carried rolls from London and Manchester into New York, Boston, Philadelphia. Domestic manufacturers followed suit, grinding arsenic pigments into their own designs. The promise was the same: durability, brightness, luxury that did not fade. The silence was the same too. Yet in America, the warning was louder. In Michigan, 1874, Dr. Robert C. Kedzie published his notorious book, Shadows from the Walls of Death. 200 samples of wallpaper were bound into a single volume. Each page glowed with arsenical greens. Each leaf carried danger into the reader's hands. The book itself sickened librarians. Copies were sealed, locked away, even destroyed. Only a handful survive today, still handled with gloves and masks. It was less a book than a poison cabinet disguised in leather binding. Kedzie's message was clear. The danger is real. The danger is domestic. The danger is beautiful. His book was a shock that British pamphlets never quite achieved. It turned wallpaper from decor into evidence. It forced a reckoning in American parlors, brief, contested, but undeniable. Imagine a small town library in Michigan. Shelves of oak, the smell of dust and varnish, gaslight hissing above rows of law books and sermons. On a table lies Kedzie's volume, plain bound, unassuming. A curious reader opens it. Wallpaper blooms across the page, emerald vines, floral scrolls, flocked blossoms. The reader rubs a fingertip along the edge, then presses it absent-mindedly to his mouth. Hours later, he feels dizzy, nauseous. The rumor spreads. Do not touch the book. The warning spreads with it. Across the Atlantic, newspapers reported with fascination. A book too dangerous to read, a warning bound in poison. Americans learned to distrust the glow of green. Some stripped their parlors, some demanded safer dyes. Others laughed and carried on, insisting the scare was nonsense. Even in warning, silence found a foothold. But the difference remained. In America, arsenic wallpaper became infamous. It was named, debated, catalogued. In Britain, it remained unnamed. No parliament bill, no royal decree, no poisoned volume to force the issue. The difference was not in the chemistry, it was in the willingness to speak. Step into a Boston parlor in 1880. The walls shimmer in Paris green, vines climbing toward a gilt-framed mirror. A mother pours tea into porcelain cups. Guests admire the brightness of the pattern, how it resists smoke and soot. A child leans against the wall, rubbing flocked leaves. No one speaks of arsenic, but perhaps someone has read of Kedie's book. Perhaps someone glances uneasily at the walls. Perhaps silence is heavier than laughter. Factories in America responded much as in Britain. Some labeled papers arsenic-free. Some denied danger entirely. Some quietly abandoned the pigments, replacing them with safer dyes. The transition was uneven, slow, incomplete. Old papers lingered in homes for decades, curling at edges, shedding dust. The harm did not end with the warning. And yet, shadows from the walls of death left a mark on memory. It proved that silence could be broken. It proved that beauty could be accused. It proved that walls could be evidence, not just background. The book itself became a metaphor. Every parlor was a page. Every nursery was a chapter. Every illness was a footnote in dust. The silence between diagnoses was the true story. Across the Atlantic, the ledger read differently. Not clearer, not more just, but louder. America had its shadows bound in leather. Britain had its shadows bound in silence. Time has passed. The parlors of Bloomsbury have been rebuilt. The nurseries of Birmingham stripped, repainted, redecorated. The families who coughed have long been buried. Yet the walls remain, not in homes, but in museums, in archives, in conservation vaults. Wallpaper samples, catalogues, entire rolls, carefully stored. Some are framed under glass. Others lie flat in drawers lined with acid-free paper. Some are still locked away in sealed boxes, labeled with warnings. Arsenical. Handle with gloves. Do not breathe dust. Step into a conservation lab at the Victoria and Albert Museum. The air smells faintly of paper and chemicals. Shelves hold binders of pattern books. A technician pulls open a drawer. Inside, a length of green wallpaper glows, with vines and blossoms, unfaded after more than a century. She wears nitrile gloves, a mask, a white coat. She lifts the edge with tweezers, careful not to let dust rise. The flock still feels soft to the touch, but no hand may touch it bare. Here is the irony. The very papers that were dismissed as harmless in their own age are now treated as dangerous relics. The green that once covered nurseries is now sealed away like radioactive ore. Visitors admire framed samples from a distance. Conservators measure arsenic content with digital instruments. The same silence that denied harm in the 19th century is replaced by caution in the 21st. The walls, preserved, remember what the ledges did not. Consider the National Trust houses still lined with original Victorian wallpaper. Some parlors remain intact, their greens still glowing faintly in lamplight. Guides warn visitors not to touch the flock. Signs read, "Historic wallpaper, do not brush." The danger has not faded. Arsenic does not rot, does not dissolve, does not forgive. What was once invisible is now acknowledged, but only in whispers, in labels, in curatorial notes. Even in libraries, the danger lingers. Books bound with wallpaper samples are still sealed. Kedie's volume survives in Michigan, its pages turning only under controlled conditions, masks and gloves in place. Archivists joke grimly, "This is a book that can kill." They mean it. It is still true. The rooms remember not only poison, but luxury. Velvet drapes that once trapped smoke still hang in great houses. Gilt mirrors reflect the glow of chandeliers. Crystal decanters sit on marble sideboards, polished for display. To visitors, they seem timeless, elegant, safe. To conservators, they are evidence. They are witnesses. They are survivors of an age when beauty and silence conspired. Imagine walking into such a preserved parlor. The wallpaper curls faintly at one edge, exposing plaster beneath. The green remains vivid. A guide speaks softly, reminding guests to stand back. A velvet rope separates you from the wall. You lean forward anyway, squinting at the flock, imagining the touch, resisting it. Behind glass, luxury becomes ghostly. Beauty becomes warning. Comfort becomes artifact. This is the paradox of memory. The Victorians refused to name arsenic on death certificates. Coroners did not write it. Priests did not preach it. Parliament did not ban it. And yet, a century later, the walls themselves force the admission. Museums label what funerals ignored. Archivists caution what coroners dismissed. Visitors whisper what doctors once denied. The rooms themselves are the ledgers. Every flocked vine in a drawer. Every glowing sample behind glass. Every roll stored in darkness. They are lines of absence written into material. They tell us what was never written, that silence killed, that beauty betrayed, that luxury remembered when humans did not. In a drawer in the archive of the Victoria and Albert Museum, a book rests heavy with patterns. Each leaf holds a sample, blossoms, vines, scrolls, birds. Some are muted, vegetable dyes that faded long ago. Others are impossible, greens as bright as spring, unfaded after more than a century. These are the dangerous ones. Turn a page. The pattern is called Peacock Garden. Printed in 1889, its birds spread tail feathers across emerald vines. Gold traces catch the light, shimmering even in dimness. The flock feels soft to the touch, a velvet pressed into paper. Conservators wear gloves. They touch it only with tweezers. To lean too close is to breathe its dust. The pattern was once sold in London shops, admired under gaslight. Housewives chose it for dining rooms, gentlemen for libraries. Imagine the showroom, mahogany counters, crystal lamps, velvet curtains pooling at the floor. A salesman unfurls Peacock Garden, spreading it like a banner. A lady leans near, silk-gloved, eyes widening. The green does not fade. The gold gleams even under coal smoke. She smiles, nods, signs the bill. The roll is delivered to her townhouse, pasted to her walls, admired by her guests. Now the same pattern lies silent in a drawer. The birds still gleam, the vines still climb, the emerald still glows. But no one pastes it to plaster. No child sleeps beneath it. No guest runs a hand along the flock. It is beautiful, and it is untouchable. The pattern book is more than catalogue. It is ledger. Each page is a transaction preserved. This roll was sold. This color was admired. This dust was breathed. The book does not record symptoms, funerals, diagnoses. It records only beauty. The silence is implied. Step closer. Imagine the senses. The flock presses velvet against the fingertip. The gold glints like coin in lamplight. The green dazzles, almost unnatural in its intensity. But beneath, silence, arsenic, absence. A page that kills quietly. A pattern that whispers only when tested. Other designs lie nearby. Willow boughs, soft and meandering, praised for their naturalism. Trellis with birds hopping among lattices. Fruit with pomegranates swelling rich in red and green. Some tested safe, some did not. In conservation labs, the distinction is precise. In Victorian parlors, it was not. The irony is sharp. The Victorians purchased these patterns as permanents. They do not fade, the salesman promised. They endure, and they have endured too well. The greens are still vivid, the flock still soft. What was once praised for not fading is now feared for not dying. In the quiet of the archive, the pattern book feels alive. To turn its pages is to feel an echo of the showroom, of the parlor, of the nursery. Guests laughing under chandeliers, infants coughing in cribs, servants dusting vines, doctors riding cholera, coroners riding debility. The pages contain no words of warning. They do not need to. The beauty is the warning. The pattern book is a museum now, but it is also a grave. Each page remembers what the ledgers omitted. Each page whispers the absence that filled nurseries and parlors. Each page is testimony, unspoken but enduring. A Victorian home was more than shelter. It was a theatre. Every room staged a performance of respectability, prosperity, and order. Drapes, mirrors, chandeliers, fainting couches, corsets. Each object was costume, each surface a mask. Step through the front door of a townhouse in Bloomsbury. The hall is tiled in encaustic patterns, polished until they gleam beneath gaslight. Velvet curtains frame the drawing room. A gilt mirror doubles the glow of the chandelier. On the mantel, crystal decanters gleam beside porcelain figurines. A faint smell of beeswax polish mingles with coal smoke. To the visitor, it is comfort. To the family, it is reputation. To the walls, it is silence. Corsets encase daughters in whalebone and silk. Their organs are pressed inward, lungs constricted, waists cinched until virtue itself can be measured in inches. The fainting couch is not decorative, it is necessary. Lace collars hide the shallow breaths, the pale complexions. To the guest, it is fashion. To the family, it is pride. To the body, it is strain. Gas chandeliers hiss above lace doilies, their mantles glowing white. But leaks are common, odorless, invisible. Entire rooms ignite in the night, flames rushing along velvet drapes, devouring wallpaper, consuming nurseries. Death comes without warning, and yet every household insists on gaslight. Brighter, cheaper, modern. Oil lamps are for the poor. Fire is the price of progress. In nurseries, lead gloss paints the crib rails, smooth and shining. The paint flakes, sweet to the tongue. Burton's line etches itself into children's gums. Bottles of porous glass hold spoiled milk, swaddled in lace covers that trap damp and dust. Dolls in arsenical fabrics rest against wallpapered vines. The toys are objects of innocence. They are also objects of harm. Consider the dining room, mahogany polished to a dark sheen. A table spread with linen, silver cutlery, porcelain plates edged in cobalt glaze. The food itself is no safer. Bread whitened with alum, wine stretched with lead acetate, milk thinned with chalk. Guests dine beneath chandeliers, toasting health, while every course carries absence in its flavor. And yet, the house performs. Guests admire the gilt, the drapes, the papered walls. The mistress of the house speaks softly of her daughter's engagement, her son's studies, her husband's business. She does not speak of her headaches, or her child's cough, or the maid who collapsed by the fire. Silence is part of the performance. Every object serves dual purpose: luxury for the eye, silence for the ledger. The wallpaper is the greatest mask of all. It promises gardens that never wither, vines that never fall. It promises permanence in a world of soot and smoke. Families believe it is beauty made durable. They do not see it as beauty made dangerous. Step into such a house at night. The street is quiet. Inside, a faint glow spills through lace curtains. A corset lies half unlaced on a velvet stool. A chandelier hums faintly with gas. A cradle rocks gently in the nursery. The wallpaper glows green, steady, loyal. No scream, no cry, no alarm. Only absence, patient as breath. The house is a mask. It conceals more than it reveals. It hides its harm beneath ritual, beneath fabric, beneath etiquette. And when the funerals pass, the curtains are drawn again, the chandeliers lit again, the mirrors polished again. The house resumes its performance, but the walls, flocked, glowing, silent, remember what the family will not, and the green, patient as always, records every cough, every fainting breath, every silence. The house masks, the ledger does not. How many died? The question hangs over every page, every parlor, every funeral. How many children wasted away in nurseries lined with vines? How many mothers collapsed in drawing rooms glowing emerald by gaslight? How many servants carried coughs from dusting flock, only to be buried without name? The truth is, we do not know. We cannot know. Victorian medicine did not name the wall. Coroners wrote cholera, debility, enteritis. Parish priests inscribed short lines, dates, names, but never arsenic. No government office counted, no inspector measured, no parliamentary report weighed the deaths against the profits. The silence is the record. Chemists tried to calculate. They tested scraps, measured dust, heated samples to flames. They proved arsenic could lift from walls, settle in lungs, pass into blood. But they could not measure absence. They could not count funerals hidden in ordinary words. Their journals offered warnings. Their pamphlets named danger. But their numbers were ignored. Imagine the scale. Millions of rolls were sold across Britain. Parlors in Bloomsbury, nurseries in Bath, drawing rooms in Birmingham, hotels, libraries, schools. Each roll contained ounces of arsenic ground into pigment. Each wall released dust with every brush, every coal fire, every damp season. Multiply the dust across years, across households, across generations. The total is uncountable. And yet, for each case there is a story. A child in Manchester whose cough lifted at the seaside, only to return at home. A maid in Paddington whose gums turned blue, a faint line dismissed until her body failed. A diplomat rumored to have died at Osborne, his ledger marked with another word. A merchant's wife in Leeds, faint and wasted, her husband insisting it was nerves. None of these were written as arsenic. All of these were arsenic. The luxury only deepens the mystery. Velvet curtains, gilt mirrors, crystal chandeliers, all frame the silence. Guests admired the beauty. Families trusted the brightness. Doctors avoided the accusation. To count deaths would have been to count the price of fashion. No one wanted the sum. The question remains, how many? The answer remains, more than we will ever know. Step into a cemetery in 1880. Rows of headstones lean in damp earth. Some names are already faded. Infants buried before their first year. Mothers taken in their 20s. Fathers gone before 50. The stones say little. The parish records say less. The wallpaper says nothing, yet it was there, in parlors, in nurseries, in bedrooms, in halls. The silence stretches. It stretches across ledges, across archives, across generations. Historians search, but they find only fragments. A newspaper warning, a doctor's note, a stripped nursery, a rumor in a palace. Fragments cannot be totaled. Fragments cannot be summed. And so the question becomes not how many, but why none were counted. Silence was not accident. It was chosen. Doctors chose certainty over doubt. Families chose beauty over suspicion. Parliament chose commerce over caution. Each choice erased a number. Each erasure multiplied absence. The ledger of arsenic wallpaper is therefore not a ledger of sums, but a ledger of silence. The absence itself is the evidence. Imagine again the parlor. Gaslight glows. A gilt mirror doubles the light. A child coughs. The doctor arrives, prescribes tonics. The funeral follows. The certificate reads, cholera. The parish writes a name. The wallpaper glows still. The green remembers. The ledger does not. And so we arrive at the cruelest truth. We cannot count the dead. We can only count the silences. And the silences are endless. No law ever banned arsenic wallpaper in Britain. No act of parliament struck it down. No proclamation warned families to strip their walls. Instead, the silence endured. Mothers stopped buying. Merchants shifted their stock. Factories whispered of arsenic-free and hoped suspicion would fade. And the papers themselves, the vines, the blossoms, the peacocks, curled quietly at the edges, flaked into dust, sank into baseboards. The danger was never confessed. It was simply forgotten. The ledgers of doctors did not name it. The ledgers of coroners did not sign it. The ledgers of Parliament did not record it. But the walls had already written their own record. A cough that lifted by the sea and returned at the keyhole. A child who brightened in sunlight and dimmed in a nursery. A servant who collapsed dusting flock, her cloth blackened with coal and green. A diplomat who slept in a palace chamber and never woke. Each absence was an entry. Each silence was a sum. Step once more into the parlor. Velvet curtains droop heavy with smoke. A gilt mirror reflects gaslight across vines that never wither. Crystal glitters on the mantel. Silver spoons rest obedient in their drawer. A child's toy horse leans against a wall that still glows emerald in the half-dark. The room is empty now, the family gone. The ledger's closed. Only the wallpaper remains. The green has no voice, but it remembers. It remembers the hands that touched it, the lungs that breathed it, the funerals it watched in silence. It remembers the absence written in every line that never said arsenic. This was not murder, it was ritual harm, practiced, polished, printed in catalogues, trusted by mothers, admired by guests, denied by Parliament, forgotten by ledgers, preserved only in silence. And when the rooms were demolished, when the papers curled into dust, when the pattern books were stored in museum drawers, the echo endured. It lingers still, not in words, not in numbers, not in laws, but in silence itself. And if you lean close enough, you will hear it. Not a voice, but an echo. Not a confession, but a memory. The green remembers. If you would have trusted beauty in that century, if you would have sat beneath those glowing walls, tell us below. Would you have torn the paper down, or would you have trusted silence? And if you want to keep turning these ledgers with us, like this video, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so these rooms are not silent again, because another ledger waits. They called them schools, places of learning, places of virtue, places where poor children were taught to read, to sew, to pray. But behind the iron gates of the Victorian workhouse, lessons were written in hunger. Education was a mask for labor. Discipline was measured in lashes, not books. Silence was demanded as obedience. The records speak of instruction. The rooms remember something else. Join us next time for the next video. What schools never taught about Victorian workhouses.